This episode is brought to you by MPB. Get cash for the kit you're not using or trade it in for the gear you want at mpb.com. Hey, folks, in this episode of the podcast, we're going to find out why Valerie Jardin, the intrepid street photographer, is no longer hitting the streets virtually. This is TWiP. Welcome back to another episode of This Week in Photo. I am your host, Frederick Van Johnson. Today on the show, I have the pleasure of sitting down with a longtime friend of mine, fellow podcaster, photographer, educator, Valerie Jardin. Valerie, welcome to the show. How the heck are you?
Hey, Frederick. I'm doing really well. I'm actually so happy again because I'm actually back on the real streets. But you're right. I don't hit the streets virtually anymore.
Well, and then for the folks that don't know, the Hit the Streets was the name of your podcast. And sadly, I'm using the word was the name of your podcast. Although it's not gone, it will live on in perpetuity, right? People can still go listen to several seasons.
Yeah, I have to figure that out. Do I have to keep paying every month for the episodes to be available? I have to figure that out.
Kind of. It's kind of like rent, Valerie. Kind of. You can stop paying your rent.
So hurry up and listen to all the episodes quickly because I may not pay forever.
Pull them down now because Valerie's going to pull the episodes down and make NFTs from them, and then sell them that way. But for those that don't know, Hit the Streets was a really popular podcast that Valerie she created, was the host of, and brought street photography to thousands and thousands of people who hung on her every word. And sadly, a couple of weeks ago, Valerie, you decided to no longer do the podcast. So tell us why. Why is Hit the Streets no more?
Well, it was... Okay, so it's been 8 years of podcasting without taking a break. I went from Street Focus, and a lot of TWiP listeners remember Street Focus back 8 years ago.
Don't use numbers like that with me. I hate when people. These numbers are sad, so don't tell me.
They're sad. And then I switched to a podcast under my own brand from one week to the next, and then it was nonstop for another nearly 200 episodes, and then I figured, I'm going to take the summer off. First time ever that I took 2 months off podcasting. And then I realized in August that I did not miss it at all. And that just the thought of going back to my normal travel schedule where I'm on a plane teaching a workshop somewhere in the world every month, pretty much, and then having enough episodes in the can before the fall season and so forth just was not appealing. And so I said, well, I could quickly find 4 guests to record next week before I get on the plane, or I could not do it. And I decided not to do it. It was as simple as that. So
wow.
I don't miss it. I miss the people. And actually, sometimes you kind of feel invisible when you're a podcaster. Mm-hmm. Very few people will send you notes. I mean, you'll get people sending you little notes like, oh, this is so great. Mm-hmm. You changed my commute, blah, blah, blah. But overall, you'll hear more from complainers than from people who love it. And then I stopped and I released the last episode. And then I received seriously 100 messages from people who said, what are we going to do now? We never miss an episode. I'm like, where were all those people? Mm-hmm. All those 8 years,
Yeah.
So it's like nobody complains about the train that's running on time, right?
That's exactly right. Yeah.
So I felt kind of bad because I was enjoying it. And I knew the people listened in 153 countries and the numbers were good. Although I wasn't really concerned about numbers. I really did it because I loved it. And then, but there's also the part of, finding new guests every week or every other week and recording ahead of time, and guests who don't show up, or they decide at the last minute, oh, well, no, let's do this next month because I'll have something to sell or something. And that just got to be like, ugh, do I really want to do this? Yeah. And so I decided, no, this was never one of my top photography gigs. This was always kind of something on the side. And I'm so busy with other things. I'm like, the podcasting was always, a way to give back to the community. And I
Mm-hmm.
gave back. I gave plenty for 8 years. And now I feel like, hey, I kind of need a break because
Yeah.
I want that time to be spent doing other things that I'm always running. And so now I have that little bit of time, and I have more time to be the guest on others' podcasts, which actually I was turning down a lot of them because, when you're a podcaster, the last thing you want to do is to be a guest on another podcast. And so
Mm-hmm.
now I have time to do that, and I feel like I have a lot to share. So I'm actually really excited about that. So thank you for having me on the show,
You're
Frederick.
welcome. Thank you for coming on the show. Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of what you're saying is resonating because yeah, I mean, if you in yeah, it can become a grind. Yeah, and all for all the reasons that you mentioned, notwithstanding guests, scheduling and flakiness and time zones and
Yeah.
equipment kerfluffle, all that
Oh
stuff.
gosh, yeah.
It all comes in. It's part of the podcasting game. But I'm really, if I can be so bold as to say, I am proud of you that you have never been the one to shy away from change and evolving yourself and bold change. Like part of it, if folks that may not know you may not know that you have chosen to shoot with a Fujifilm X series camera
For eight
solely.
years.
That's it for 8 years. That's it, right? You go out
Yeah.
there. This huge, wonderful body of work that you've created is all with a fixed
Yeah.
lens camera. You're not into the whole mirrorless thing and
Mhm.
all these lenses and lights and tripods and drones and 360 and all this stuff. It's that camera,
I have
right?
all
It's
my money in the bank, not in gear.
yeah,
Kidding.
yeah, yeah. So tell me
I
about
have
that.
all my
Let's
money in adventures, not in gear.
that's exactly what I want to switch to. I want to talk about that. So this latest adventure away from podcasting. So we closed that door. We're on to the next chapter of Valerie. Not to say that you won't reopen the podcasting chapter at some point in the future, right? You could do that if you wanted to. You
Yeah,
have the skills.
possibly. Yeah, I
Yeah.
just follow my heart in everything I do. So my heart wasn't into it. I was certainly, when I stopped working for clients 10 years ago, I did my last client gig and decided to devote my time to educating, inspiring, traveling for my photography and inspiring others. I had pledged to myself that I would never do something that feels like work.
Hmm.
And the podcast felt like, all of a sudden, felt like a burden. And I said, why would I put myself through that? I'm doing what I love to do. I don't need the podcast. The podcast is not, doesn't bring in revenue. It costs money. And I had fun doing it. But then if it stops being fun, why would I do that? So
Yeah.
that's how I live my life. And
Hmm.
and every day is precious. And I'm certainly not going to spend more time doing things I don't like than I have to. So there.
Absolutely. Yeah. No,
Mhm.
and that's if I've learned one thing of the last 18 months to 2 years is life is precious and
That's
we don't
right.
tomorrow is not guaranteed, so do what you want to do today.
Yeah.
Well, so let's switch gears and talk about how these workshops are going and how speaking of the last couple of years, this pandemic stuff and COVID and all that stuff has kind of put the brakes on that a lot, but now you're kind of getting back into it and things are starting to thaw out a little bit. How's that going?
Oh, it's so good to be back because, and I'm glad when this whole pandemic started that we didn't know how long things would be on hold. I thought, how I'm gonna, survive without doing what I love the most for the next 3 months. And then a year and a half later, workshops were still being canceled because borders were closed and such. So just restarted. Actually, I started in June with a Minneapolis workshop, which was amazing. And then London had to be canceled because half the group couldn't get into the country. And then just back now from the week-long Normandy workshop, and it was just phenomenal. It was exactly like the last Normandy workshop I did in 2019. There was no difference. Everybody was 100% focused on learning, having fun, making new friends, eating good food. And I don't think anyone said the word COVID for a week. And it felt so good. So just back from that one and heading to Paris in a couple weeks. So and next year looks busy. A lot of the workshops are full or almost full. So people are ready. People are so done staying home and being afraid. People are vaccinated. Things are really good in Europe. It's
Yeah.
really, really
Yeah.
good. There's still that anxiety level when you get back in the States, that's for sure. But things are so good there.
What does it look like? Take me through the flow of somebody that's, maybe listening to this and like, yeah, damn it, I want to go on one of these trips. I need to get out of the United States for a minute and do some photography. I want to go with Valerie. What's the flow? What's covered? What's not covered? What does a workshop look like?
Well, the covered, it all depends. Like the one I just taught, the Normandy workshop, is my all super luxury, all inclusive workshop. So that one is you get picked up with a private chauffeur in Paris and brought to a 5-star luxury beachfront hotel, the most beautiful hotel north of Paris, actually, right on the coast. And then a week later, you get brought back to Paris with the same service. So that one is the only one now that's all inclusive. Well, except we always have dinner together, of course, because you want time on your own and time to shoot. But every day we have adventures with that same service and the chauffeur that's just for us. And so that one is the only one like that. It's very unique. It's very popular because well, nobody else does that, and it's home. So it's literally my home. I have a place there now that's just 5-minute walk along the beachfront from the Grand Hotel where my students stay for the week. So it's special. My family's from there. I have so much family history, and it's such a beautiful part of the country and so rich with history. So that one is it's not just street photography, it's about visual storytelling in general. So it's so much more than just street. Otherwise, workshops, now it used to be that hotel was included. I don't do that anymore. It's pretty much I give suggestions. We just I rent a conference room, and then we have adventures every day. Some meals are included, but the hotels are up to people because people have different it used to be, I made it really difficult for myself for many years where everything was included. But people want to do Airbnb, or people want to do luxury hotel, or people want to do something a lot less costly. So now I give suggestions, and then people book their own accommodations, and it's worked a lot better, and it sure is easier for me now too.
Yeah, so they get themselves there. So they cover airfare, and their accommodations, and then the workshop itself is a schedule. So you'll say, hey, okay, everybody, day one, be here for the orientation at this time, and you guys kind of hang out and you set the rules, and then from there, then you said meals are included. Are you paying for meals?
Some of them, yeah, usually like 3 meals, like a welcome and a goodbye dinner for sure. They're all very different because some are weekends, some are 3 days, some are 4 days, some are a week. So they all completely different formats.
Why are they different?
A lot more options. Well, because I find that the week-long workshops will usually be more Americans and Australians, but they still can't travel, so I won't see Australians for a little while. Yeah. But the 2-day or 3-day workshops, I can have 10 people from 10 countries. And that's a lot of fun too, because Europeans don't travel the same as Americans do. They'll do a weekend thing, but they won't necessarily go for a week long. On a week long workshops, I'll only have usually 1 or 2 Europeans, whereas on shorter workshop, like 3 days, I could have several European countries and some Americans and Canadians or whatever, but it's a lot more diverse as to, and I think it's a different dynamics. It's a lot of fun. So I do it actually for me because I like the diversity. I like to have a diversity of people, and I like to be able to accommodate to, people who can't do the full luxury thing, but still want to learn street photography for 2 days in Paris. And so now I have a lot of more flexibility, and that's been a lot of fun.
And I hate to put you on the spot, but I got to ask, because I'm kind of asking for me, so I am my listener. What am I looking at if I want to come to Paris? So I'm coming out of, who knows what the airfare is from.
It's super cheap now. It's the best time to travel.
Yeah. So out of San Francisco
to
Paris, and then accommodations, and then your fee. What am I looking at out of pocket?
Well, it depends. If you stay 3 days, it could be, your airfare right now for San Francisco. You can probably get flights round trips under $500. So, into next year. So I think that's why people are really booking, because if they can get their airfare, and then it depends. The workshop goes from $750 to almost $5,000. It depends what you want to spend and what you want to do, and if you want super luxury or just tuition and quick weekend in Paris. So yeah,
I
so pretty
love it.
much anybody, pretty much anyone can find something that works if they really want to do it and they want to plan for it. Mm-hmm.
And I can vouch for, because I came along on one of your workshops several years ago, and I can vouch for the workshop was amazing. I mean, you're in Paris, right? So, I mean,
Yeah.
so,
But there are Parisians who take the Paris workshop. So,
What?
that's when you actually know that you don't come for the destination ever. You come for the experience. So yes, when it's your first time in Paris, but most people who go on the Paris workshop, they've been there 20 times. So it's nothing new for them, but they see it for the first time again when they come on a workshop. So that's kind of fun.
Yeah, but it was amazing. I remember, I and I tell you this almost every time we talk. I remember wondering what power source Valerie Jardin has discovered, or is she an android, or like why is she able to walk at such a pace and take us to all these amazing places and never break a sweat? You're just
When you love what you do, it's I've never been tired of walking, for one thing. I've never ever said, "Oh, I'm tired, I need to sit down." I'm standing as I'm recording this. I never sit. So
Yeah, that's amazing. That is amazing. So okay, so that's the workshop piece of it. So it's a range, right? So it could be a couple of
yeah,
days, it could be a week long, it could be all
yep,
inclusive. It could you pick your own hotel. If you're broke and you want to stay in a hostel, you can do
that's right. You
that.
can
If
do
you're
that.
loaded
Yeah.
and you want to stay in the presidential suite at the Ritz-Carlton Paris, you can do
You
that,
can do
right?
that. Actually, at least people who come out of my workshop haven't spent all their money on gear to go
Yeah.
to go on the workshop. So the people are better off spending money on education. At least they'll get something out of it. I never
Yeah.
get it when people spend all that money on new gear. I don't get it. Do they actually become better photographer for it?
No, it's
That's
a
yet to
placebo.
be determined.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. Just because I love your approach to photography, the minimalistic. I say minimalistic, but minimalistic sounds intentional. Like you're just, I'm just trying to prove a point by doing less with more. You literally don't enjoy there's a lot of photographers that are just like, hey, what's the next version of Photoshop, or what's this and what's that, or hey, this drone now has this many megapixels and can fly for this long. You are polar opposite of all those people. Though you respect them, you play in your own world of just capturing light and shadow with that little camera and in walking around and enjoying yourself. Can you talk a little bit about your philosophy when it comes to because I'm sure you've had people come on your workshops that are loaded up with backpacks full of gear.
Not anymore, actually, because I really do think that's one thing people embrace when they come on my workshops, that they're going to shoot with one camera, one lens for a week. And a lot of people will bring backup stuff, but then they find that, wow, this is liberating. And I see so much better now that I'm just, focusing on seeing and not on switching lenses or settings. So it's really the whole point is to get the camera out of the way so that you can focus on the important thing, which is seeing. And I find that people who come with simpler gear or even use their phone will learn so much more and see better quicker than people who have so much gear. 10 years ago when I started teaching workshops internationally, they would be like 9 DSLR for one mirrorless, and then quickly it just kind of reversed itself. Like maybe 3 years ago, I'd still have one DSLR in the group, but now I haven't seen a DSLR in years. And a lot of people will have a similar camera. My work, although I'm a Fujifilm ex-photographer, Fujifilm has nothing to do with my workshops, and I really don't care what people shoot with. Honestly, when people ask me which camera should I get, I don't tell them, oh, you should get this one. It's a Fuji. That's what I shoot with. No, because it's not for everyone. And so a lot of people want the flexibility of having a interchangeable lens system, which is totally fine. Actually, I tried one. You'll laugh because I tried one on my trip to France in May. And it was a new camera. Fuji asked me, "Oh, could you take pictures with that for our online thing?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's a 50 millimeter lens." I mean, seriously, I had to back up all the time. I thought I should probably have like beep 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 because I was like so out of my comfort zone, and so I hated the experience. I'm like, it's so counterproductive to my creativity to have to learn to use first a new camera because settings were a little different, and then a focal length that has no consistency with my body of work. And it made no sense. I quickly returned it after I got back. I'm like, I don't even want to keep it. So I love what I have. I have two. That's my only requirement. I just need two of each edition of the X100 because
For
I have
backups.
one that has the rain backup, and then one that has a rain kit because now it's weather resistant, except that the front element cannot be sealed, so you need to put a filter in front of the lens. But I don't shoot with filters, so I need one for every day, and then I need one for rainy day. So, but the rainy day camera only comes out on rainy days. So
Yeah, interesting. How do you find what's the best way for sharing the work? You know, the shots that you do either on a workshop or, you know, I know you did during the pandemic. You did a lot of things around your town at home. Like, how do you share that stuff? Is it mainly through the website? Is it SmugMug? Is it something else?
No, Instagram only now. I don't post on Facebook, and so Instagram. And then if I'm working on an ongoing series, I have a portfolio in my portfolio gallery on my website with each series that I'm working on. So I add to them regularly. Yeah, so.
Wow.
That's about it. Instagram is pretty much it. It really is where I post stories when I'm on a workshop. I'll post videos, action videos of workshop outings that we do or students at work. And so I post a lot on stories, but I only post one photograph a day on my, on Instagram. I think that's important to not to post too many. I tend to unfollow people who post like 10 pictures in a row because it's like, no, that's just too much. So I really recommend regularity. It's good to be on a schedule, but just minimal, like one picture, two at most, but it's best if they're actually on the same post. Like you could post several pictures in one post and people can flip through them if they want to, but if they only want to see one, well, put the best one in front.
Yeah, no, for sure.
And then I blog still a little bit, and then I've been teaching online a lot for the past year and a half and writing more books. So I think that's also one of the reasons where the podcast, which was yet another online experience, just became too much because I was really starving the human interaction. And so that was way too much online stuff for me.
Yeah.
I'm a people person.
Yeah, I get it. It's a lot. And you take on, I would say a good 50 to 75% more than the average carbon-based life form. You are that ant. Valerie, you're that ant carrying a giant leaf. That's who you are. Like, how the hell is she carrying that leaf? And you do it effortlessly like the ant.
Because I love it.
Because you love the leaf.
Because I love it.
Yeah. We need a t-shirt with the ant on it with a leaf that says love the leaf. The secret to life is loving the leaf, right? So before we wrap up, I want to chat a little bit about just street photography in general. People that are listening, they probably saw your name in the podcast feed come up and they're like, street photography, finally, give me some tips on street photography for getting out there, and you and I have spoken before, so I know some of this, but take it. I know it's a whole world that you can't compress into 2 minutes, but for someone that wants to get into street photography but hasn't because of the perception of invasion of people's privacy, especially these days, or what would you say to the person that says, yeah, I want to grab my Fuji X series camera and go into the city near me and do a photo story on homeless or global warming, whatever, what would you say? What's some advice that you give?
Well, first of all, if you get into street photography because you love people, and if you love people, you're respectful of them. And granted, there are plenty of disrespectful street photographers out there that make it more difficult for the rest of us. But just respect is really the one rule. And then, of course, the fact that nothing is staged or posed or directed, that's another obvious rule. Otherwise, why do it? If it was easy, it wouldn't be any fun, right? So it's totally candid. And I even wrote a book about how to do street photography without revealing the identity of your subject. If that's the way you prefer to do it, that's totally fine. You can certainly have approach it very differently. You don't have to be in people's faces, and you certainly don't have to always show people's faces to do meaningful work. So there's so many ways to approach it, but it really is about opening your heart to the beauty of everyday life. That is what street photography is. So it doesn't have to be all happy all the time and people kissing. No, but life is beautiful, and it's when you freeze a moment, a story in a frame, and the elements come together in that fraction of a second, and yet still leave room for the imagination because you never really know the full story. Then I can't think of any genre of photography where you'll get that satisfaction, because it is so difficult. And a lot of people don't understand street photography. A lot of people think that it's staged or posed or things like that. But no, real documentary photography is just like photojournalism. Nothing is. I don't even spend 5 seconds on a picture in Lightroom. So I don't clone things. I barely crop things, if ever. I choose black and white or color before I press the shutter. Those are all decisions I make. So I'm quite a purist, but that's totally up to you. Honestly, the only person you have to please with your photography is yourself. So.
Yeah. Which is you hit on two questions that I wanted to ask you. One of them is street photography. Well, there's several questions. Street photography, is it synonymous with photojournalism? Is it just another way of saying photojournalism, or what's the difference? Is maybe a better way?
Well, except that in photojournalism, you will, look for sometimes sensationalism and things like that, which in street photography you don't. It's really freezing a moment of everyday life. But the approach of true street photographers is very similar in the way that they're not going to touch up, clone things, or direct things. So the ethics of street photography is very much like true photojournalism. And yet again, there's true photojournalism. And then you find out that, maybe they cloned this or that. So true photojournalism in the sense that nothing is change. So I certainly don't touch up my photograph, where I won't remove things from the frame. But some people who want to sell their work and do more of a fine art street photography, and I do too, like if silhouettes and such, I don't touch up because I find that it's part of the merit to get the unwanted elements out of the frame in camera. But people will touch up, if they want to sell their print or something, and that's totally fine. I mean, again, it's their own work. But people who actually pose their subject or direct people on the streets and call that street photography or documentary photography, that is plain dishonest. That is directing people, and it has nothing to do with street photography. So it's often a debate because a lot of people do that and don't and make it pass as documentary photography. Well, it's not, because you remove the challenging element out of the equation right there.
Right. You're cheating. Yeah.
And it wouldn't be any fun. So that is really the way I teach it. It's really about being in tune with life around you at every moment, the way light will hit a certain place, and then you see a beautiful subject come through that light, and then be ready for that moment. Or you see an expression of joy, and you get closer and closer and closer while remaining invisible, and then get the shot. So it's really being up close, not being afraid to be up close. But again, you can certainly shoot it in a more minimalist way and less obtrusive way. And I know that people are concerned about that. And a couple of years ago, that's when I actually wrote that ebook that's been very popular, because people realize that, oh, well, I don't have to be in people's faces. And I urge people not to be in provoking people. That's so ugly. So don't bring a flash and flash people's faces and run away. That is not the way to do it.
Yeah. I mean, it's refreshing to hear your approach to it, because specifically the lack of post-processing, and how you're shooting a couple seconds on the image and you're on to the next one. Because I think a lot of folks get hamstrung with, I've gone on this trip and I've shot all these photos, and now this is another 3 hours of post-processing that I have to do on each image to get it ready to share. So I'm just going to leave them on the hard drive till I get around to it, right? You're not in that camp at all.
And you
right?
can't even do that to a street photograph. Either you have a compelling story, or you don't. There's nothing you can do to change that. So if it takes more than a few seconds, I trash it, because it's not worth it. So, and nothing will make it a compelling story. So, it's either good or it's not good.
Does street photography have to be black and white?
No, absolutely not. Some people only shoot black and white. Some people only shoot color. I totally let the subject make the decision, in the fact that if the subject is all about color and the story is about color, I'm going to shoot it in color, in camera. If the subject, if the color is too distracting, then black and white makes more sense. Often color will distract to the point that the emotion doesn't even go through. Like when I was in Cuba, everybody thinks of Cuba as a colorful place. I shot more black and white because I felt there was so much color that it distracted from the emotion of the place and the people that I photographed. So black and white removed all that distraction, and then you focus more on the subject longer. And so those are decisions, no matter what, you should make before you press the shutter, even if you can change it later. But it's very rare that a photograph will be as strong in color and black and white. Very, very rare. It's usually instantly you can see, oh, this is color or this is black and white. And it's interesting when I do portfolio reviews or critiques, and I see that somebody why they shot or they converted into black and white, and I always ask why. And then we go back and say, no, the color was stronger. And then I show them why, or vice versa. But it's more difficult to shoot in color, for sure. It's less giving. But really, there are photographs that I have only because it's color. In black and white, I would have never kept it. But it's all about color, and converting a photo that in black and white would make absolutely no sense. There would be nothing left. So it's really about the subject.
Yeah. Interesting. There's so much here. It's so much. We
can speak for hours.
So it turns out street photography is pretty deep. There's a lot going on.
It is very deep.
Have you ever considered? I know you do video clips and that kind of thing for Instagram stories and all that. Have you ever considered incorporating video clips into street photography and capturing that element of motion and maybe natural sound instead of just a still?
No, because that's the thing about street photography. It's really that decisive moment, and it's about seeing it and capturing in that fraction of a second. And so that's where the challenge is. But because it is a challenge, that's why it is so addicting. If we were to freeze a frame from a video, for example, because people have thought of that. Well, you're taking the challenge out of the equation. And if it's too easy, it becomes boring very quickly. So if it was easy, no one would do it, honestly, because it would just become if it's too easy, it loses its appeal. And it's because of that constant challenge, and you're never there. You're never the best street photographer ever. You constantly will challenge yourself to finding more difficult, more challenging situations, getting closer or working with more difficult lights, that you're never bored. And honestly, when you I always warn people who come on their first workshop. First of all, they'll probably do a few more, and second, they will get hooked. But then they're never going to be bored again. You wait for a train or you wait for a plane, and there you're doing street photography. So you can do this anywhere. So
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Okay, last question here. So I've been on this sort of tangent of, I know the anti Valerie Jardin way, but this tangent of learning about the viability of a mobile based workflow. Like, what does that look like? Especially considering the new iPhone 13s and the whiz bang cameras they have in there. I have a 12. What do you think about the viability of using mobile phones or a mobile workflow versus your mirrorless or Fuji X series all the way through? Is it possible? Can you do street photography?
Absolutely, and people only do street photography with phones, and nobody can tell the difference half the time. So it's definitely where it's going, but there will always be room for our little camera. I think it's the tangible aspect of it that we're going to miss. I use my phone just to photograph my dog and everyday things we do as a family,
Parking spaces, that kind of thing.
yeah. But honestly, I don't get much satisfaction, even though I have a 12 as well. And you do the portrait mode, and it's pretty cool. You gotta admit, it's getting better and better. But it's like, yeah, but it's making all the decisions for you. So, it doesn't give you that same satisfaction. And I think it's going to be, it may never. So I think there will always be room for people that are more purist, just like there is room for people to shoot film. And there's plenty of film is still very much alive. And so I think, definitely cameras. I mean, I would be worried as a camera manufacturer today because, the phones are getting better and better and better.
It's crazy.
And we always have a camera with us. So actually, somebody interviewed me yesterday and said, "What would you do if I took your camera away?" And I asked, "Well, it depends. Am I keeping my phone, or do I have nothing?" Nothing left to take pictures with, because that makes a big difference. And I'd be okay with a phone. It's just not the same experience. That's all.
Yeah.
But eventually, you won't. There won't be a difference between the quality of.
It's very close. Yeah, it's very close. It's scary close. Yeah, and you hit it right on the head. If I was a camera manufacturer and what is it, $2+ trillion company, Apple had this IP, with all this crazy technology and these iPhones and ubiquity across the planet, a built-in installed base, and then one day Apple says, you know what? Let's throw a couple of billion at making a pro or semi-pro camera again. Because remember, back in the day, they made a camera called the Quick Take. Apple did, and then it failed or went away, or they gave up on it. But what if they were to reinvent that and take the power and the learnings and all that magic and the ecosystem, the app ecosystem, and put that in something that's semi-pro? That might be interesting. Or they got trillions of dollars, they could just buy Fuji, right? Why not?
But then sometime, you see a sunset, you want to take a picture. The sunset is going to turn out a lot better quicker with a phone than it will with your camera any day.
Right.
So, there are times where I much rather use my phone. It's it does the work for me. And, in things that are not so creative, like shooting a sunset, which I rarely do. But if I was to, it definitely looks better on my phone. So, yeah.
Valerie, before you leave, does your street photography mainly focus on people, or can other elements be in there, like cracks in the street, or a weed growing up from a manhole cover or something like that?
No, the street photography really implies the human element or the idea of humanity. So if it's like a discarded shoe on the sidewalk, that could be considered street. But if it's a building, then it's architectural. So those are two different things. But yeah, in a story of a place, as a street photographer, you want to capture, if you want to tell the story of San Francisco, you're going to have, people, or the idea of people. They could be something like, as I said, a discarded shoe or something that will tell a story. That's not the one that's probably going to be, on your wall, but in a story of a place, it will have its place.
Yeah, like chewing gum stuck to a doorknob or something. A human put it there, right? So
that's right.
It
so
tells
that's
a story.
Debatable. Like people don't even think that street portraits where you actually have eye contact or an interaction with the subject is part of street photography. But, why not? It's a different type of street photography, but it's still a stranger. It's on the street, except that there is an acknowledgement that you're taking the picture. So some people prefer it that way because they feel like they're not invading their privacy. And other people find it a lot more challenging, even because then they have to actually have an interaction with someone. So I think there is a way to shoot this beautiful genre of photography for everyone, whether you're extroverted, introverted, shy or not. There is a way for everyone to get started. Yeah.
And the law, at least in the United States, that allows, or quote, allows street photography to be possible is the whole thing around expectation of privacy in public places, right? So for folks that are thinking, so maybe you can define it and tell us what the real deal is around taking pictures of people.
I'm not a lawyer, but yes, and it's pretty much the same everywhere. People always hear about the privacy laws in France, for example, but people are in public, and as long as that's why it's so important to be respectful. As long as you're not photographing someone in an embarrassing situation or in a vulnerable situation, or in an illegal situation, then they have nothing to go for. Someone would actually have to prove that you did damage to them with a photograph. So there's nothing in my work, for example, and I've talked with lawyers and who work in this field. There's nothing in my work, for example, that people would feel, offended to be, portrayed. Actually, on the opposite, it's happened that someone knows someone they see on some of my pictures, and then they connect us, and they're thrilled when I can send them the picture or the file for them to make a print. I love when that happens. And I've never had someone say, "Oh, could you take this down? It's terrible." Or, no, never. It's always been a great experience, whether it's somebody in Germany, in Australia, or in France, or in the States, anywhere. Whenever people see themselves either on Instagram or so, they love it. They always find like, wow, I would never have that picture of me. That's cool. Totally candid, and it's a beautiful moment. It's never going to be making fun of someone. So
you ever had a situation where someone you were taking a photo of noticed you and they're like, "Hey, what the heck are you doing? Delete my photo off your camera." Yeah.
No, people have noticed after I take. The whole point is to not be noticed until the picture is in the camera. Otherwise, the moment is gone if they notice you. So that's why you have to be really quick and subtle. But it's happened that after I take the shot, as I'm walking away, the person noticed that I raised my camera. And no, it's never a problem. What I do is important. And I think once you feel good about what you do and you know that it will potentially have value, historical value someday, and that's so important to do it well for that reason too, then if people come and ask you, just tell them what you're doing. I'm documenting life on the streets of New York, Paris, wherever. And it's more curiosity. People just don't know what you're going to do with those photographs, or are they for, you're going to sell them to a newspaper or something. So it's never had any problem. And no, it's no different. I don't treat any place differently. I use the same respect and approach whether I'm in Melbourne or in Rome. So or New York, it's always the same. And if you do that and you're respectful, you'll never get in trouble.
All right, parting shots here. Last question for folks that are watching or listening to this, and what would be a good just sort of, somebody either an amateur or a beginner that wants to get into street photography, or someone who's already in it and wants to take it to the next level and do something interesting and out of the box? What advice would you give to this group of people that are looking to the sage street photographer Valerie Jardin?
Well, really, don't expect to have 10 keepers at the end of the day. People, if you have so many great pictures, then usually the bar is pretty low. So you'll have some good pictures, but if you have one picture that stands out in a week of street photography that really you want to print, that's pretty good. So just keep raising the bar. Don't shoot the same thing over and over again. Don't repeat yourself, because you won't have much satisfaction. Even if you're even if you don't travel, you don't have to travel. You should actually make your best work in your hometown. And so just try not to repeat yourself. Always find for a more challenging way to see things, and an experiment. Get my latest book. Actually, there's 75 exercises for street photographers.
Awesome. And what's the book again?
I think you may have it, Frederick. Street Photography Assignments, 75 Reasons to Hit the Streets and Learn.
Yes, I do have it. Yep.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So people have actually, one of my student, a young guy who just started with street photography, was just on my workshop, and he's been working exercise after exercise after exercise, and I'm blown away how he's improved just by following this, the progression and finding more difficult things. So he was living proof that the book actually works.
And yeah, I'll link to that definitely in the description for this YouTube video, and also in the show notes on thisweekinphoto.com, so people can click over to it and grab that. Yeah, great book. Published by our Rocky Nook friends. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And it's in Italian and German now too as well. So
excellent. So what's next? What's next for Valerie?
I'm just going to be traveling again. I'm just so excited. Every year
You're in town for 2 weeks, right?
Yeah, well, no, because I'm teaching in Minneapolis actually tomorrow. But I'm going to write more books. I have other things, more live action stuff, filming maybe next year. And just continue to inspire and share and have fun. I mean, I'm having so much fun that, again, if it stopped being fun, I would stop doing it. You can't do this. You can't teach if you're not having fun doing it. I think no one would learn. No one would have fun. And the camaraderie of a workshop is just so amazing. And so I'm always ready for the next adventure. So I'm hoping 2022 is a normal year where it starts in Paris in January and just keeps on going to November without interruptions. That would be really, really good, because I'm going to new places. I'm going back to Rome for 2 workshops. I'm going to Denmark for a new workshop next year. So new places and a lot of friends coming back to those places with me. And so it's always fun. My workshop that I just did was 100% repeat. So,
wow.
I felt like I was going on vacation with friends. It was pretty cool.
Wow. That is fantastic. That is fantastic. Congratulations on all that.
Thank
Valerie,
you.
you are the portrait of a photographer who has found herself, right? So you know what you want to shoot, you know what you like, you know what you don't like, and you're leaning into the stuff that you do well and moving away from the stuff that you don't like that much, right?
Life's too short, It's do what you love. And a lot of people say, "Oh, you living everybody's dreams." Like, yeah, well, it didn't just happen. It's not just luck. It was hard work, and it's hard work to maintain it. But there's nothing else I would prefer to do. I mean, I don't miss. I never miss working for clients. I shoot for me. I have no one to please but me. And then if people like what they see and they like my way of teaching, well then. We have a blast on workshops, and they learn, and we have fun, and it changed. I love that I'm changing people's lives in many ways. They discover something that when people get hooked in photography, it changes their lives, and so I love that, and I love to see them growing in their craft. It's so rewarding for an instructor. So I love it.
Love it. All right, we'll leave it right there. Valerie, where should people go to sign up for the workshop and buy the
Pretty
book
easy.
and do everything?
Google my name, you'll find me, Valerie Jardin, Valerijardin.com.
And that's it. All roads
And on
lead to
Instagram
Valerie.
as well. That's right.
Yeah. Very cool. All right, we'll leave it there. Valerie, thanks for coming on. Always
Thank
a
you,
pleasure
Frederick.
chatting with you. Congratulations in this. I don't know if you'd call this a next chapter. It's just kind of like, it's a thick book, right?
Exactly. It's cool, as long as I'm still paying for all the services for the podcast. Who knows? I may just publish an episode out of the blue in 6 months. You never know.
So stay subscribed to Hit the Streets. You don't want to miss one of
right.
these elusive episodes.
Very spontaneous, so you never know what could happen.
That's cool. All right, Valerie. You
Thank you.
have a good time teaching in Minneapolis, and safe travels on your next jump across the ocean there.
Thank you.
All right. Take care, Valerie. This is TWiP. This episode was sponsored by MPB, the world's largest online platform for used photo and video kit. Visit mpb.com.